All of this is going to go into this master database. And the goal of Palantir, just like it was with total information awareness, is about stopping crime before it happens. It's pre-crime. And Trump has been openly building databases on people. And this is neoconservatism being framed as something else.
So recently, Whitney Webb revealed Palantir's dark strategy to enslave us, why this is getting almost no buzz from the corporate media, and the Trump administration's role in it all. Now, Whitney is an expert on this issue. She's written a lot about it, as well as the Epstein case, and it's in the context of a conversation with Sabby Sab. So let's get her take on this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
What was brought to my attention is this idea that Donald Trump agrees with, which is called freedom cities, which is also something that is pushed by Peter Thiel, apparently, where going back to the old days where we had company towns, where it's like, it seems like corporate takeover of these
the modern
towns.
version of that with programmable stable coins. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where they're trying to take things. But I am not an expert on the freedom cities. I would encourage you to interview Ian Davis, who basically covers that beat for my site, Unlimited Hangout, and is having an upcoming piece on freedom cities and has written about some of this other stuff in a series he did all about the Tealverse, and their vision for what they, the government corp technique, the gov corp technate model, which is basically, privatized government, but you're privatizing the state, but you're not necessarily you're not removing the authoritarian capacity of the state. So you're basically taking the state and then just making it a corporation, and the CEO runs it like a dictator. I think there has been kind of a concerted effort to take policies that people were outraged about, like during COVID, that were authoritarian, and sort of rebrand and repitch a lot of them as coming from the so-called libertarian right that has been financed by Peter Thiel. But Peter Thiel is not a libertarian.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, Peter Thiel has aligned himself with some libertarian interests. He used to fund Ron Paul, but now he's best known for starting Palantir and getting his initial funding for that from the CIA to the tune of $2 million through In-Q-Tel, by the way. And I think Whitney's exactly right about how the privatization of tyranny is the new scheme that government uses to get away with atrocities and violations of our civil liberties and of our basic rights that they couldn't get away with if it was just the government doing it alone without the merger of corporate power too. This is taking what's called the third party doctrine, the idea that there's legal precedence to assure that there's no reasonable expectation of privacy if you share data with a third party that's later sold to the government or just given to the government. It's taking that idea to the extreme to build, kind of this technocratic tyranny that Palantir is trying to build through a surveillance apparatus, and expanding the surveillance apparatus beyond even what the NSA does and what Snowden's revelations reveal about that criminal entity.
He likes to claim he's a libertarian, but he says, free market competition is for losers. If you want to get rich, build a monopoly. And Peter Thiel has built his monopolies with the direct involvement of three-letter agencies of the U.S.
Yeah, that's hard to deny. That's true. And, he's a faux libertarian in that respect, certainly. He is a technocrat. He's very connected to people like J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is essentially his protege, the one that he pushed to be the vice president. And a lot of people don't know about this association. And, it's stunning. Alex Karp and Peter Thiel are helping to surveil U.S. Americans by the creation of a new database that aggregates not only what the NSA has on us, but also information regarding our taxes, our medical status, all sorts of other data points that weren't coalesced into the same database yet. This is all built in our midst. This is happening right now. And again, the right isn't talking about this at all, but I assure you, if Biden was doing this, this would get some buzz on the right. It deserves a lot more talk, that's for sure.
The most obvious being Palantir, but also when, they were creating PayPal, they went around to every three-letter agency that would talk to them. So, I mean, this is a long-standing effort with these people. And Peter Thiel, I would argue, has been, honestly, a social engineering genius and rebranding neoconservatism as edgy and libertarian, because libertarians used to be anti-war and now a lot of them are not. Wow. And you could thank Peter Thiel for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. You'd find people that are faux libertarians and say, they're not non-interventionists or not anti-war. I would say then that disqualifies themselves from that characteristic. I'm not here to gatekeep, but what I will say is, the propensity to steer libertarianism into a technocratic direction is a bad thing. I mean, we can get behind the good impulses that people like Elon Musk had about reducing government with also, aligning with creating a technocratic, tyrannical state around a surveillance regime, too. You can compartmentalize the good from the bad and be totally against those propensities. That's where we're at.
Peter Thiel, basically, so there was this program after 9/11 called Total Information Awareness, where basically they wanted to install a pre-crime system in the United States. And in order to stop terror attacks before they happen and all of this stuff, right? And it was defunded by Congress because they rightly pointed out that it would erode Americans' constitutional rights and eliminate the right to privacy entirely. And so they defunded it, but they didn't get rid of all of its programs. And then the guy that was running Total Information Awareness was this guy that was the top official in the Reagan administration, arrested for Iran-Contra, and he was pardoned by William Barr when he was Attorney General the first time. Poindexter was his last name. And so Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, when they're making Palantir, go to Poindexter, who they considered basically the godfather of surveillance, and were like, how do we remake this as a private company? And they did that with the help of Richard Pearl, who was in the Bush administration at the time, considered one of the architects of the Iraq War, who's been a longtime agent for Israel embedded in the US government. He wrote a document called, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on the name right now. That's so embarrassing. But basically, he wrote this policy document for Netanyahu when Netanyahu first came to power in the late 90s, being largely propelled into that role with the help of Ronald Lauder, an American billionaire. And the document basically said, like, we need to overthrow Saddam Hussein, and I also believe the Assad dynasty of Syria for Israel.
Yeah, the paper she's talking about is called A Clean Break, a New Strategy for Securing the Realm. We've talked about it a lot on this channel, but Richard Pearl is one of the worst and most vile neocons ever. He pushed the Bush neocon agenda further than almost anyone else in that administration. I'm embarrassed to say, back in 2003, that is the side that I was on. I was propagandized and repeated the propaganda. But now, in hindsight, you can see how atrocious that was. And, I turned against the neocons a long time ago, but it's embarrassing to admit my complicity back then. But she is right. He is the worst. And he is in bed with Peter Thiel and these people to build this surveillance apparatus using third-party entities in combination with the state. It's a fascist extension of the state to do what the state couldn't really get away with if it had done it independently.
And so, and then previously Pearl had a lot of other very suspect ties to, the Israeli state that should have gotten him thrown out of government forever, but did not. And so this is basically how Palantir comes to be, in addition to heavy funding from the CIA through NQTEL. And basically, Karp has admitted that Palantir was always intended to have the CIA basically be their main client, and that they, the CIA was their only client for their first several years of existence as a company. And Palantir engineers went to CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, every 2 weeks for several years, having the CIA tweak their product. Intimately involved in this was one of the top chief information guys. I think the top executive, the CIO of the CIA, was a guy named Alan Wade, who, while he was in the CIA, co-founded a company called Gilead with Ghislaine Maxwell's sister, Christine Maxwell. So,
Yeah, these people are all in bed together. It's the uniparty. It's the deep state. That's exactly what it is. And Palantir, instead of providing a service people want, they're being controlled and guided by the CIA. They're in bed with the CIA. They persist not through competition, but as a parasite in the nature that it manifests today. It's there to build surveillance for the purposes of the CIA and the deep state. And we shouldn't be surprised by that, because in addition to just Peter Thiel himself, it was the CIA that provided Palantir's initial funding.
This is basically the company that contracts for all 18 intelligence agencies and knows everything about you, according to the New York Times, and probably according to Palantir themselves. And Trump has been openly building databases on people with Palantir. Of course, most people know that they're doing that with ICE, but the administration announced not that long ago that they're doing it for everybody. And Palantir also manages all of your health data because they contract extensively with HHS. So, this is very concerning for a lot of reasons. One point on that I would point to is how Trump in his first term, there was the spate of mass shootings, I believe, in the latter half of 2019. And Trump called on social media companies to stop shooters before they commit a crime, and to basically flag what people were saying on social media and use that to determine if there should be intervention before a crime might be committed, basically.
That's Minority Report.
Yeah, that's literally Minority Report, the movie, the dystopian movie that talks about this, stopping crimes before they occur. And if you think about that, it makes sense, because how would the government even begin to trying to stop crimes before they occur? It's through the mass accumulation of data and using an algorithm to sift through that data for supposed risk scenarios and red flags. This is just red flag laws that they would use for trying to stop people from acquiring firearms, just aimed in this direction, a surveillance apparatus, and it's criminal in every way, a total violation of the Fourth Amendment. And you have whistleblowers coming out of Palantir speaking about these evils, speaking about how it violates basic rights, civil rights, privacy rights. And again, this isn't getting enough talk, especially those people on the right that were supposed to be skeptical of the deep state. Well, the deep state's embroiled with Palantir here.
Actually, William Barr, when he was in office the first time, created this program that legalized pre-crime in the United States. And I think I was like one of two people maybe that reported on that at the time. It was called Deep, and there's been a few arrests under Deep for people making Facebook posts and things like that. But not that many, but the legal framework has been there since, Trump round one, basically. But anyway, this pitch that Trump made about having social media spy on its users and use like analytics to, bring about some sort of pre-crime society, he was being pitched at the time, and he was interested in it, but it didn't ultimately happen, in creating this agency called HARPA, which was supposed to be like the health version of the Pentagon's DARPA. And the program that they wanted to start with, the acronym was Safe Homes, and it was basically about analyzing American social media posts for early warning signs of neuropsychiatric violence, and then based on that, would either send people to a court-ordered psychologist or physician, or even house arrest.
Just think about how criminal and tyrannical this is just so atrocious. If there's a pathway to a social credit system that's singular and unified and centralized in Washington, D.C., this is it. They'll turn all of us into Canadian truckers, but worse. They'll have more access to things about our lives than the Canadian government had to those Canadian truckers that decided to, rebel to some extent, and they had their assets frozen, their crypto and Bitcoin stolen and seized from them. This is the basis for a mad regime, a tyrannical regime, the total state. And again, it's not even getting enough buzz from the mainstream left-wingers who aren't, I should say mainstream liberals who aren't using this to their advantage politically. They're talking about other things. And, Palantir is a winning issue, I think, among the public to get more information out about this, because, most people, regardless of their political stripes, they want to have their privacy, and they want not to be subject to these stupid pre-crime programs that would manifest in absolute tyranny.
Without them having committed any crime. So now that we have big tech even more intertwined with Trump round two, people should really be paying attention to the stuff, especially now that Palantir, especially through the Doge, formerly led by Elon Musk agency, has sort of embedded Palantir in even more aspects of the government than it was in before, including like the IRS and mortgage stuff like Fannie Mae and all of that, all have Palantir now. And then basically giving them the keys to the kingdom with a lot of data that the Department of Treasury has about your finances and the IRS and all of that. All of this is going to go into this master database. And the goal of Palantir, just like it was with total information awareness, is about stopping crime before it happens. It's pre-crime. And Palantir did that, for a few years, several years, in police departments around the country, piloting predictive policing programs, which is pre-crime.
With CIA direction, by the way, and CIA inputs, CIA considerations, and CIA guidance. That's exactly what they do, and she's right. Palantir was already in bed with the government before Doge arrived, but the suspicions cast on Doge and what they're doing to change the algorithms of the executive agencies, maybe in the benefit of Palantir, is something at least worth being skeptical about. Even if you're for, like I am, cutting government, I certainly am, and that part of Doge revealed itself to be a sham. I mean, Doge projected $2 trillion worth of government cuts. It codified something like $9 billion total, which was easily offset by the CR, the big abominable bill, and the Pentagon budget, which was, by the way, about $150 billion more than the biggest Pentagon budget under Biden. So that's what we're left with. We're left with this deep state, which is controlled by an entity so close to Palantir, merging personal private data with the state into this apparatus, into this database.
And mainly low-income minority neighborhoods, starting off in New Orleans. And this is neoconservatism being framed as something else. And they've spent a lot of money with the rebrand, and I think they've been very successful. But this goes even before Bush. This goes back to the Reagan era, when they tried to create, they did create these programs called the continuity of government protocols where basically they could suspend Americans' constitutional rights in the event of a vaguely defined national emergency, which included, per the Reagan administration, mass nonviolent protests about a U.S. military intervention abroad.
Yeah, what do you know? Protesting the wars will get you on a list, and you're always the biggest enemy in the world if you try to end a war, but if you start a war or encourage a war or support the wars, they'll make you president. Such has it always been. Many cases to support that in my lifetime. No matter who we vote for, we always get John McCain, as my good friend Thomas Woods says. But yeah, she's right. I mean, all the hallmarks of this Palantir scheme, this Palantir program, are reminiscent of the NSA's bulk data collection program, the things that, Snowden blew the cover off. He revealed the truth about that, greatly to his own detriment. He has remained in exile for that. And because of that, it's changed his life completely. He deserves a hero's welcome in the United States, by the way, for the great service he did, plus medals. But Palantir wants to take the worst parts of that program and reorient them in a way that would be suitable to people being willing to support the Peter Thiels of the world that are involved in this madness, the Alex Karps that think that this is, some kind of entrepreneurial pursuit. This is a pursuit of some geniuses that is providing a valuable service to citizens, but it's not. It's only providing a valuable service to the CIA and the deep state to have all the dirt they want on us. And this, again, goes far beyond the NSA bulk data collection, which was mostly given to them by telecom providers and internet providers. But they want to amalgamate that from data from other parts of the state, other parts of the three-letter agencies, the credit collection departments and companies, just amalgamate that all into a singular database. Much is said about China's social credit system. Some of it's overblown, but they don't even have a centralized singular system that this might be. So the warning signs are here, man. This is the red flag. They want to build a system that red flags all of us as the basis for potentially a social credit system and a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, so that they can freeze our assets on demand if they want. So should we express an opinion that the government doesn't like? That's the biggest fear behind Palantir. I'm so glad people like Whitney Webb are covering this. Not enough people are covering this, especially on the right, and especially after people are already aligning behind a J.D. Vance presidency, a guy who's closely intertwined into Peter Thiel and Palantir and what they want to do with our data. You know, this is going to be an interesting question come the elections. I hope that the independent media grows to the extent that more and more comes out about this over time, so people can be warned about what's behind the political force that is J.D. Vance. It is Peter Thiel, and it is Palantir. That's where we're at. Thanks, Savvy Sabs, for having Whitney to talk on this. I'm so glad there are people like her talking about it. It needs more discussion, needs more coverage, on my channel included. I need to cover this more. Please let me know in the comments below, is Whitney Webb right? How dangerous is Palantir and what it's trying to produce? Do you see any way to curtail the influence and power of Palantir under this administration? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, also subscribe to Sabrina Salvati. Thank you so much for this programming. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can help support the channel, and I'll really appreciate that. And in return, I'll give you access to all my videos that are members only before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.